Hey class. So I just wanted to go over an example of like what this a moment in time story is going to look like. Okay, we're going to go over some definitions. Then we're going to look at some examples of like those definitions, right? We're going to go over what kind of this sort of very short story has, and then we're going to look at how that's applied. Cool. That's then you guys are going to answer a few questions, and our lesson's done today. Okay. So first, what are some words that we need to know? Okay, and it might be a good idea to like take out a notebook and jot these down. I'll give you a second to pause. Perfect. All right. So the first word is dialogue, and this is a word that you guys should probably know. Dialogue is just a conversation between two or more people in a book, play, or movie. Right? It's when two people talk to each other. Right now, we're not having a dialogue because you're not talking back. If you are, a little crazy. I can't hear you. Sorry. But hey, then we would be having a dialogue. Now, one question we have is like, how do you tell who's talking in dialogue, right? Because when we're talking, it's easy for you to hear me and like see my face. But when you're reading a book, it's easier to like read, blank says, etc. So that's a dialogue tag, right? And a dialogue tag is an attribution. It's when it's a small phrase either before, after, in between the actual dialogue itself. So it could be like Mr. Gittner says that dialogue tags are helpful. The next part is the dialogue beat, right? This is a little bit different because sometimes in books and sometimes in stories, you don't have like blank said, but you have an action to delineate or an action to tell us who's speaking in the dialogue instead of a dialogue tag. So this is a dialogue tag. One way to remember this is a dialogue tag is like the author telling us who's talking, and a dialogue beat is like the author showing us who's talking. The last definition we're going to go over today is something that we talked a little bit about in the Crucible, right? Is imagery. And imagery is vivid language that appeals to the senses in order to communicate something abstract. All right. So these are the four things that we're going to make like that must be in your moment in time story because these are four things that make a powerful specific story. So now we're going to start reading this one. And as you can see, it's highlighted to kind of tell you. So this one doesn't have a title, but it is something from a student, a sophomore. Hey, my father closes the door behind him. Scoot over a bit. He sits beside me on my Star Wars sheets. I say nothing. I stare at the floor. Mom told me what you said. Guilt and shame washed through my insides, eroding my composure, ever flowing, brisk and cold. I am in trouble. Tears carve tributaries down my cheeks. You know why we don't say that word, right? Dad says. Yes? Why? Because it's a naughty word. That's right. Now Mom wants me to give you a spanking to teach you a lesson. My father tenses this moment, waiting for my response. I stand, knowing my fate. My father grabs my arm. Bend over. I brace myself. The swat stings, not enough to leave a welt on my skin, but permanent in my memory. I sob, shaking, one arm wrapped around my waist, the other on my bottom. After long minutes of sputtering, my breath comes in ragged, upset gulps. I calm down, but the sound of sobbing does not cease. I turn back toward my father. His head is in his hands. The sound of his helplessness reflects against my own, mixing our pain into a cacophony of confusion and powerlessness. His eyes are his father's and the entire patriarchal lineage of all fathers. His cries are almost as violent as my own. We are both helpless, unable to stop. Dad, I wince. Come here. He takes me into an embrace, patting my back, his tears dropping into the carpet. You're a good boy. I'm sorry. We stay like that for long minutes. He keeps repeating, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dad, he sighs. Again. Now, some things that you'll notice, right? Dialogue tags where the author is telling us explicitly who's talking are highlighted in blue, right? And that's always like dad says, my father grabs my what? Huh, what's interesting? That's not a dialogue tag, right? Because dialogue tags are where it's explicitly said, like this person says, right? Instead, this is a dialogue beat. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that color a little bit. Perfect. Cool. Also, my father tenses at this moment. So what's interesting is that's not really a dialogue beat either, right? Because that one is like describing what the father is doing, but there isn't dialogue after. So the purpose of that can't be to like tell us who's talking. Cool. Oh wait, no, here we go. My father's. Never mind. I was totally wrong. See, it says it right after the dialogue. My father tenses at this moment, waiting for my response. That's to remind you that like this is the father finishing up speaking on that. That's embarrassing. Sometimes it happens. Um, then you have this long description, right? Something that's vivid and like I don't know about you guys, but if you were spanked, it sucks, right? Not just because of the pain, but like for me, it was because it felt like shameful, right? I felt like the worst part was almost like I felt like I deserved it. And like you can kind of see that here in the image, but at the same time, you can see the empathy of that father here in that image. Like it doesn't want like this isn't great. This isn't exactly what he wants to be doing. But then at the same time, we're both helpless, unable to stop, and that kind of connects to that ending of the story, that single last line of dialogue again, right? Something about like hurt people, and we just keep repeating the things that like until we find a way to break out of them. You have that dialogue to I wince, right? Wince is like it's a thing you can it's kind of like flinching, but it's also a it's like if flinching was talking. Then this one, he takes me in an embrace, patting my back, tears dropping onto the carpet, right? So that's in between these two things to indicate who's speaking here. What you'll notice is that most of the text in here serves a purpose. This one too, guilt and shame wash through my insides, eroding my composure. That's also imagery. I stare at the floor, right? That's a descriptive phrase to like talk about where the main character is staring. But most of the words here serve a purpose. They are one of these four things. Okay. Throughout this video, you've had some questions pop up, right? Hopefully, you've answered those. But what I want you to do now, in a brief paragraph, is just like describe to the best of your ability, like how you might how you might use these techniques dialogue, dialogue tags, dialogue beats, and imagery to communicate a memory that you have, right? You don't have to write the story like this, but I do want you to describe like some ways I might use these to tell a moment in time from my perspective is blank. Okay, thanks, guys. Um, at this point, you have accomplished this assignment. All right, it's auto graded, so you can see how you did in actively learn. Thanks for hanging, and I hope that today you learned the vocabulary, some of the vocab we're going to be using. Remember, dialogue, dialogue tags, dialogue beats, and imagery. If you remember what those are, you're in good shape. And hopefully you've seen like some examples of how you might use those to tell a story. Next time we're in person, we're going to start writing. Cool. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful day.